Brett, who is your garbage person of the week?
My garbage person has been taken from what has become a distilled hive/dumpster of horrible garbage on a daily basis, the White House press briefing room, where Daily Wire reporter Mary Margaret Houlihan asked one of the most insane questions, but sadly to be expected in the wake of the Minneapolis shooting, where it has been asserted that a transgender person committed the act. Here is the follow-up that refreshingly isn't about thoughts and prayers.
This is the second shooting involving a trans-identifying shooter who specifically targeted Christians and Catholic kids. What kind of consequences do the gender-affirming therapists, doctors, or even the parents of these shooters face after these types of shootings?
Well, as for the parents and potential therapists in this case, again, all of that is still currently being investigated by the FBI. I know the Secretary of Health and Human Services this morning said that HHS is investigating perhaps links between some of these drugs and these prescription drugs that some of these minors may be taking and an increase in violence. And obviously, we have mental health problems in this country.
It is a fact that there are not trans people disproportionately, as it is such a small proportion of Americans, but there is no evidence that there's a higher disproportionate acts of violence perpetrated by trans people. Usually, I had a New York Times reporter once tell me to my face that there's a thing called 1-2 trend. You need 3 things to say it's a trend. Daily Wire, they're very conservative, very economically efficient. Only takes 2 to call it a trend. But you thought that was bad. Here's the follow-up.
I've seen a lot of calls for action, among these lawmakers saying that we should just be praying. One that I've seen on the right actually is calls for the FBI to institute a new class of domestic terrorism that involves trans ideology. Is that something that the administration would support?
I would have to check with the appropriate people on that.
What they do, what Karoline Leavitt did that no one may be noticing is we'll have to look into that. A lot of people do that to buy time, but they're doing that to legitimize what is the most insane claim you can make. Victims of violence are trans people. Yes. Disproportionate to their population. Yes. Vilified publicly by Republicans disproportionately to their population. Yes. All of that is true. As is true the statement that most of the people who commit domestic acts of terror are right-wing extremists. Yes. But this ain't it, John.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, when, we have had 296, 97. No, that's stats from yesterday. We've had probably 298 mass shootings so far this year, and trans people did one of them. Okay, so for the other nearly 300, what consequences should there be for their therapists, for their doctors, for their parents? What should, the next time a right-wing incel does this, what should the consequences be for those who radicalize them into their incel ideology? We could do this game if they want to. In that case, it is actually an ideology. They say trans ideology, that's not a thing. That's not actually a thing, except to right-wingers, because they don't want to admit that they are against these people. They are pretending that it's a terrorist organization or something like that, when it is, of course, not. And the grossest thing about this, and one thing that I am going to be furious if on the first day of a new Democratic president, they don't clean out the trash from this press room, but that you can get these garbage influencers who have been handed a mic, and so now they're reporters or whatever, that just go in and say, hey, here's a crazy thing, will you do this? That's all it is, over and over and over again. Here's the wildest thing I got off of 4chan of stormfront.org. Is Trump gonna do it? And they'll say, oh, I'm hearing stuff or whatever, but no, she heard it in the confines of her own brain. She wants trans people to be locked up. She wants them to be wiped out by the state. And so just seeing this over and over and over again on every topic is so grotesque, Brett, and it makes it a pretty damn good garbage person.
But no, she's wearing a nice outfit and she's in the White House press room. So she must be a legitimate person asking a legitimate question. It's so messed up. And then meanwhile, I think you'll see this later on the main show, where at the same time, the Speaker of the House is saying I'm just so mad when people politicize what's happening in a mass shooting. How dare you politicize it? 2 doors down or across the street and around the corner in DC somewhere. So when are we gonna make trans thoughts terrorism?
Yeah, exactly. And meanwhile,
Insanity.
we're gonna shut down the parts of the FBI that investigate right-wing political extremism, which does regularly lead to actual political violence.